Okay, so time to start, and I'm so happy to see so many faces, and it looks so nice when you're sitting there together, all of you. So, very welcome to play the Trustworthy AI board game with me today. So I'm Josefin Rosén. I'm from the AI company SAS Institute, where I work in our global data ethics practice as a Trustworthy AI specialist. So what I do is to advise customers and organizations and also our own employees on the topic of trustworthy AI, often around how to implement the technology in a safe and reliable way, which seems to be a hot topic here today too. The game is, as you can tell, it's actually a board game, so it's a physical game. And playing the game is a little bit like attending a round table, but not in a stiff way, but more in a playful and engaging and fun way. I think you're all going to like it, and don't feel any pressure. You can all be quiet if you can't all be quiet, but some of you can be quiet if you feel uncomfortable. Before I start walking you through how it actually works, I would just like to stop a little bit on the topic of trustworthy AI, because I think it's important before we start to just talk about what it is I mean with trustworthy AI. So to me and to SAS, and I think to most of you, trustworthy AI is simply, just as it sounds like, AI that can be trusted, right? So it's AI that is used and developed and implemented in a safe and reliable and ethical and fair way so that it doesn't harm anyone or anything for that matter. It is AI where we have asked not only could we do this, but also should we do this? Because just because something is legal or just because it's technically possible, because basically everything is technically possible these days, right? It doesn't mean that we should do it. And then the most tricky part of trustworthy AI is, and that's why also games like this are necessary, I think, and discussions like these are necessary, is that trustworthy AI is also AI that reflects our values as a society. And you can imagine that is a little bit of a tricky thing, because what is fair and what is important to someone and what is ethical and what is even accurate could be very different depending on the use case. It could be depending on the context, on the company, the industry, the country, the culture. So when I advise organizations on how to start when they're establishing their trustworthy AI practices, I advise them to sit down and discuss this. So what are the values that we want to express from our organization's point of view, and what is fair and what is accurate in the context of what we are doing in the context of our organization. So that's a bottom line. I will share in the end some more slides and talk a little bit about how we advise customers on AI governance and trustworthy AI in general. But I don't want to disturb your thoughts around what trustworthy AI is and the discussions that we're going to have. So we're going to play first for about 30 minutes, and then I'll interrupt and I'll collect your thoughts a little bit and then wrap up with some of my thoughts as well. So I think you can see the game board. You can also see the game board there. It looks almost the same on the screen as it does on the table. So we have a game board. A game board. And we do have, as you can tell, a dice, and we have a game piece. I'm looking here because I'm not sure about the animations. And we do have an hourglass, and you can see them all on the table there. And we will take turns to roll the dice, and we will take turns. The person that rolls the dice will also move the game piece. So some of you are sitting close to the table, and you will take turn to roll the dice because you can actually reach the dice on the game piece. The rest of you, I will include in the discussions. You will not be left out of this. You move the game piece in clockwise direction, and you will start by the start square. I think it's already standing on that square. And you will end up on different squares along the little trip around the game board. If you end up on a green square, then it is the person that rolled the dice that reflects. He or she does a personal reflection. That could be very short. It could just be a yes or a no, or just, a sentence. But the thing and the key here is that when you roll the dice and end up on a green square, you are the only one that are allowed to reflect on this square. Otherwise, it's going to take too much time, right? So that's the only thing. And the questions could be like, do you see any ethical challenges related to AI development? What potential do you see for AI in your organization? Do you think it's necessary to regulate AI? So you can just a short answer, and if you don't want to answer, you don't have to. If you end up on a blue square, those are sort of, funny squares that would end up on any game board, like move, change place with someone, move back to start, or roll the dice once again. Sometimes it says stand up and grab some coffee, but we are not going to do that today, because sometimes I play this game with just one organization, and then we play the full game, and that takes about 2 hours, and then it's nice to go up and have some snacks every now and then. If you end up on a pink one, those are actual cards. That's where we're going to have the group discussions, and that is a part that is more like a roundtable thing. I'm going to take the card and read it out loud so that everyone can hear, and then I'm going to move the hourglass upside down, and you have 5 minutes to discuss the topic, and anyone can contribute. Also, those of you that are not sitting very close to the table, so anyone are free to say what they think about this topic. When we have finalized those 5 minutes, we put the card in the middle, in the little loop there in the middle, just to keep track of what cards we have already discussed. And if you end up on an empty square, when you roll the dice, we move the game piece to the next card to speed up the game a little bit. After 5 minutes, I'm going to interrupt, and that's not to be rude. It's just to also make sure that we get to as many discussions as possible. So don't take it personally if I interrupt you. If there was something that you didn't get the chance to say, or if I stopped you in the middle of you outlining something, remember that, because in the end, I'm going to, these are just some examples. We don't have to look at that. Because in the end, I'm going to ask you what you bring with you from this round of games. And you can all, those of you that want, can share if there was anything that you're going to bring with you from this round of games, any key takeaways or anything like that. And then I'll do some sharing the last 10, 15 minutes or so. 10 minutes probably. Okay, so I'm not going to press next, because then that's where the presentation starts. But I'm going to ask one thing also. We're now going to stop the sound of the recording, because I want you to feel, comfortable sharing with each other. And we apply strict Chatham House rules. So whatever is being said in here, we can talk about it, but we are not sharing who actually said it. And since we're so many, and in interest of time, I'm not going to do a round of presentations either. So you don't really know, if you're not reading each other's cards, who you are. But feel free to discuss freely and feel comfortable with that. I'm going to ask Marit to roll the dice first. And also, when we talk about trustworthy AI with organizations, we say that trustworthy AI, that begins before the first line of code. And it's obvious that we agree with this around this table too. It's really something that you need to plan for. You need technology, you will need a lot of things in your AI platform, but it's definitely a need for a comprehensive, more holistic approach where you also involve the people, where you also involve various processes, right? So I said before about that a lot of people are using AI, but AI governance is sort of lacking behind. We have a study that we did, a global study at SAS when it comes to generative AI readiness, and the result, there are various reports for various regions, but the overall result is basically that most companies and organizations are already using generative AI and AI in general, or they are working on implementing it as we speak. but only as little as around 5% or so have a plan for AI governance and have, for instance, ways to measure bias, to assess privacy, and even having both the tools and the readiness and the knowledge within the organization to do it in a safe and reliable way. So with 7 minutes left, I would just like to share how we look at AI governance at SAS, where I'm working. So we're looking at AI governance from 4 pillars, basically, that is reflecting this comprehensive approach that I mentioned with people, process, and technology. So we think of AI governance from an oversight perspective, really keeping humans in the loop. At SAS, we have established an AI oversight committee. So SAS is a global company, right? We're in all countries in the world. It's a very large company. So we have this cross-industry, cross-functional group of executives. They used to meet maybe every second month in the beginning, but now meeting much more often and discussing AI ethical dilemmas that we come with them, to them with. And that could be anything, from could we really sell to this organization when they plan to use our AI in this way? We're providing an AI platform, right? Could we engage in this project because they are intending to do this? Is this really ethical? So all of these kind of ethical dilemmas are sort of discussing in a diverse group of people to give guidance to the organization how we should do. And then we also think of AI governance from a compliance point of view, of course. I mean, we're in the EU, and the EU AI came into force in August, and it's about staying up to date on what the regulations obviously are happening in the regions where you're active, and to set up risk management methods for yourself, to set up yourself with the risks that you're ready to take. So that's one part. And then there is culture. We talked about culture, and even on the main stage, they talked about how important culture is. And you were also in talking about that, I think, because we say that everything when it comes to trustworthy AI and AI governance only travels as fast as the speed of culture. So basically, making sure that we create a culture fluency around the topic. We're doing that with training. That could be through YouTube videos or what you find online, but it within the company could be continuous learning, continuous coaching, and continuous training of employees to make sure that everyone sort of are aware of the risks and guardrails, and also react when something is not right. And then operations, for us, that is the platform. That is really what is enabling the technology you would need to have in place in order to implement AI in a safe, reliable way. And we see it as a landscape where we put these 4 pillars as an activation layer. So the first row is really the governance model that you need to have in place before you start adding features. And then we have, and this is something that we update on a quarterly basis, and this is not specific to SAS. This is regardless of a platform, regardless of open source, whatever you use. These are things that you need to have available in your AI platform to be able to activate a trustworthy AI system. So basically 6 categories with a number of boxes within each category. So just quickly, data management is obviously one category because we all need that. Garbage in is garbage out, and we're building our AI on data. Everything it knows comes from the data, so that data obviously has to be good data, right? Explanation, since we are increasingly basing our decisions on AI, those decisions need to be explainable for obvious reasons. And depending on the context, depending on the use case, that needs to be on a high level or on a more granular level. Then, especially if we're building our models on data that contains private information or sensitive information or personally identifiable data, we need to make sure that we have features so that we can preserve and protect the data throughout the life cycle. And since we all, as you know, use bias to simplify cognitive processing, and all of our biases, or many of them, will end up in our AI solutions. So we also, of course, need to have things to detect bias and to mitigate bias. And the last challenge is we need to make sure that the models align with the present that is constantly changing. That is our biggest challenge, right? We need to make sure that even if our models are good and doing things right and fair at the time of deployment, that might change as times goes by. And sometimes things are happening very quickly, like during COVID, for instance, and when there is a war. And we need to be able to manage our models over time, maybe automatically retrain them, and make sure that they perform also good also over time. So this is, yeah?
From an AI, IT perspective, I mean...
That's tricky, right?
we've all seen Agile in name only. We've seen DevOps in name only. What happens with ModelOps in name only?
In what?
In name only.
In name only?
As in, the proper reports are coming out, but below there...
I'm not exactly familiar with it in name only, but I mean there definitely has to be some performance monitoring over time, some alerts that are being triggered to be able to know now it's time to retrain this model or even replace it, and that could be of course automatically done as well.
But that's provided for us.
Yeah, exactly. So there are capabilities for doing that, and also to keeping track of that in a way that is. You've probably seen model cards being introduced from many vendors where the whole organization basically can keep track of what's the health of our models at this time and how is it changing over time. So that's one thing to make it more approachable and understandable for everyone. Yeah, especially generative AI, definitely. It's difficult with generative AI. We're running out of time a little bit, but there are definitely ways in traditional ways to assess whether there is bias or not, and compare in different ways. But also there are also a lot of ways of working with the data before it actually hits the large language model to make it more focused on what it is that we want to ask the large language model for, so we don't waste compute. Yep, sorry. Zero seconds left, and but I'm happy to discuss that because I definitely have some ideas around how you can make large language models also more trustworthy, even though there is still a lot of research to be done in that area to make them truly transparent. This is my last slide, so we are done. And these are just some trustworthy AI resources from SAS. If you scan the QR code, if you want to read some more, there is some even trustworthy AI training for free if you would like to take that. And yeah, a lot of good stuff in there. And also I mentioned the study about generative AI readiness, if you're interested in knowing more about that. I used to have a QR code there, but I removed it right before we started because it was corrupt, but I have a new QR code on my phone. So if you want to have that, come to me and you can scan the code from my cell phone. And thank you so much for joining. I had a lot of fun. Hope you had too.